and then using PCS-T, which is the main system that you will use to submit your bid. Just a little highlights of tips on writing a good bid, sort of common mistakes. We will touch on fair working practice and community benefits, but Claire and Claire both covered that in quite a lot of detail as to what's expected there, so we'll just skate over that one. So first of all, finding the contract notice, what we'll do is, what I tend to do is use the buyer name, but you don't need to have all of it, so you don't know, just say if you're not sure if it's Forestry and Land Scotland or Forestry Land Scotland, you don't need to put the whole name in. And here I've just used Forestry, and I also use this filter, this drop down here, to say I want to see just current opportunities. So that filters out any award notices and things like that. And then you click at the bottom, search notices. And then magically what comes up is there are 3, one of which has expired. And we can see here it's this one's the Specialist Peatland Restoration, which is the one that we're talking about today. Now, anything in PCS that's that dark blue happens to be a link. Hold on, something's opening up on my screen, which is just one of these things. That's it, right? When you click on that blue highlight, it takes you back to the actual advert, and as you can see, there's lots of different tabs which you can read at your leisure. But also, just at the top here, it says we're using PCS-T, and the code is 23105, and it's under ITTs, and that's important because you need that when you want to find the actual tender in PCS-T, so 23105. So once you've got that information, then you would go into PCS-T, which is a completely separate site from PCS. I have mine linked so that I only have to log into PCS, which I'm really glad about because I'm rubbish at remembering lots of different passwords and usernames. So that's something you might want to consider if you haven't done that already, is linking them both. The Scottish Government actually provides both of these sites, PCS and PCS-T, but the one with the T on the end of it, the PCS-T, is what's often used to carry out the tenders, although they can be carried out, confusingly, they can be carried out on both sites. But in this case, it's PCS-T. It's not used for advertising. That is exclusively PCS. It's used for advertising. And this is the home screen. So this is what the home screen looks like on PCS-T. And as you can see down here, it's split into PQQs and ITTs. The reason it's PQQ and not the single procurement documents is because it's actually used worldwide by private and public sector organisations, and most organisations would still refer to them as pre-qualification questionnaires. That's why the owner of the site can't change it, because it would be changed for everybody. So as far as we're concerned, for this one, it doesn't matter because we'd actually be going into the ITTs bit. When you click on the ITTs, there are pages and pages and pages of them. So you have to search for the one that we're looking for. And the way you do that is you click on this down arrow up here, and then you choose which field you're going to search on. And because we've been given the project code, then that makes it easier to do. So if you use that down arrow up there, choose project code, and I always use contains. You can use equals, but I always just think, just in case there's a rogue space somewhere or something like that, just use contains, and then 23105, and then you click search on the right hand side there. And what that does is it then brings up anything that's got that project code. When you click on it, then you're invited to express interest, as you can see up in the top right hand side there. You can express your interest, and also if you want to, you can say, well, I'll just decide later. You don't know whether you're going to bid or not, you just want to have a look at it. So we'll go into this in a bit more detail when we actually open up the site. Once you've expressed interest, what happens is the lots appear in your My ITT section. So you can see here, well, when you search for them, the master doesn't actually come up, or it's not obvious. But once you express interest in any of the lots, then all of them appear. So you can see here that I've got two blue ones and black ones. That's because of these black ones. I haven't actually expressed any interest in them yet. I've only looked at lot 1. I haven't looked at any of the other lots, so it's not actually letting me go in and amend my response. The good thing about PCS-T is that if you have used it before, then you will have already got some of the key information. So, about your organisation, company number, VAT registration number, DUNS number, all of that will already be there and saved. So it should save you a bit of time at that side of things. My experience of PCS-T is it logs you out really, really quickly. So do save as you go along. It doesn't encourage you to save, and you have to scroll up and down a lot to get to the save button. And annoyingly, sometimes it doesn't take you back to where you were either. So then you have to scroll all the way back down to where you were actually working. But even though that's a bit of a pain, it's better than losing the work that you've done. It doesn't come up and say you're about to be logged out, save what you've done. It doesn't give you any of those helpful warnings. What happens is you just move on to another square and it will say you've been logged out. Do you want to go back to the main page, which is your login page? And by then, unfortunately, you've lost all of the work that you've done. So it's just save on a regular basis. So before we come into the sort of instructions and things, I'm going to come back to that in a second, and sort of hints and tips on writing your bid. Before we do that, I'm just going to escape out of here, stop sharing, and go into the system. So hopefully everybody's able to see the PCS homepage now. And on here, so this should be familiar to you if you're used to bidding for the public sector. This will be a site you're used to using. While you're searching for notices, you don't actually have to log in. But once you want to express interest or do anything like that, then you do need to log in. So as I said, in here I put Forestry. Oh, Forestry without 2 S's. There's a mistake there. It doesn't correct your spelling mistakes. It's not that clever. And then say it brings up the 3, so we know it's this one. Now just on the front page here, we can see the closing date is the 14th of May. So that gives you, a good amount of time, and it's good that you're all here today to get into the mood really for starting to complete your bid. So if you click on that top one there, that is a hyperlink that takes you to the main advert. So this is where it tells you that it's within PCS-T and it's 23105. So they've got this overview of what it is that they are asking to do. Then if you go into full text notice, got a contact email and contact phone number there. And then it goes in to explain what the procurement is, what the value is. So over the period of the contract in total across all of these lots, it's a big contract, it's 66 million. It's divided into lots of different lots, and these lots are geographical. So lot 1 is North Highlands, Caithness, Sutherland and Easter Ross. And if you use Claire and Claire were saying that the 70-30, so you can see it's 70 quality, 30 price, and it's got a rough value of what the contract value is for that particular lot. And then lot 2, Skye, Wester Ross and Inverness Shire. So you can see all of these different lots here. And the reason it's split down like this is you can apply for one lot only if that's the area that you want to apply for, and it's to encourage smaller and enable this contract to be delivered by smaller organisations by splitting it into geographical lots like this. And then when this is awarded, the procurement team will allocate a supplier to each of these lots when they're doing their contract award notice after the procurement is finished. So again, if we just go up here, it'll be the same sort of contact information there. So there's not really a huge amount to see in PCS itself, just because it's being conducted in PCS-T. Now, what I'm going to do now is log in as me. And if I go to the suppliers area, so again, this is something you'll probably be familiar with, but you can see down here, the very last thing on the bottom left there is access PCS-T. Now I can do that because I've set it up, which I honestly find makes my life so easy. So I'm now in PCS-T, and as I said, you've got a dashboard. So let's just have a look at the dashboard. I can go to my ITTs, and I can see all of the ones there that I have expressed interest in. But you won't have that because if you're coming to this for the first time. Now, what I'm not sure about is whether this search is going to work, because I've already expressed interest in lot 1. But let's just see if it does. I'll show you the steps you would need to do anyway. So this is the filter here. Now it does say type to start search. I've never found that works. I always just use the drop down box and put whatever it is I'm searching for. So in this case, I'm going to search for the project code. So that is what they call the criteria. And in here, I'm going to say contains, and then I'm going to put 23105, and fingers crossed, it does. It does come up with others because I haven't already expressed interest in these. So let's just say I'm going to take lot 2. So this is the page that I showed you earlier in the slides. So in this case, you can do a printable view, which means that you can just go through and see everything that's being asked. But I know that I'm going to want to bid for this one, so I'm going to express interest. It just says, you know that you're expressing interest. Don't worry about expressing interest and withdrawing later, because it's really easy to do. But once I've done that, you can see now that it appears on here blue as well, because I have now expressed my interest in it. And up here you can see the master ITT comes through automatically. So I'm just going to take a breath for just now and just see if there's any questions so far on anything we've done before we actually look at the tender itself. Just give you a couple of minutes.
I don't see any questions coming in, Julie. If you want to just check in case it came straight to yourself.
Nothing come through for me, but feel free to do so, please, as we go along, just because for those of you who haven't used this system or aren't used to public sector bidding, this is quite a lot to take in. That you will have the slides and you will have the recording to look back on. So just the master ITT is the first thing I would go to, because no matter which lots or how many lots you're going for, then you must complete this master ITT. So if we just go on here, then I can say I'm going to decline to respond once I've read it, or I intend to respond. Now you can see here at the moment I can't type anything in these response boxes. It's not letting me. What I can do is I can scroll through and have a look at the questions, which is one of the things I often do. I go, what questions are being asked here? How big a job is this going to be? How many hours, how many days is this going to actually take to do? So if you go through, scroll through, you can see there's a lot to scroll through, because there's a lot of these yes, no type questions. So when you get down to the bottom, you can see that you've got up to 1.7.8, and then there's a technical section as well. So if I just take this little scroll thing, whatever it's called, up to the top again, you can see in here I'm in the my response section. If I do intend to respond, then suddenly I get more information. So I get the information that the specification response is mostly completed, and that's because I've already done a tender using PCST, so most of the mandatory ones are already done. I've got 8 left to do. The technical response, there are 9 questions. Now, as you complete the questions, you can keep returning to this top section, my response summary, to see where you're at with answering all these questions. And again, in here, thinking, oh, hang on a minute, I still can't actually click into these boxes to respond to anything. And that's because you need to click on this pencil up here. So this pencil, I think it used to say edit, and then it was very clear, but now it's pretty difficult to see actually. But what that means is I'm going to open it to modify it. So if you click on that pencil, then suddenly what you've got is the ability to respond. So there is a supplier's guide, which is a standard thing. And if you click on the calendar, you can just choose a date. You'll see over here, these have got asterisks beside them. That means they are mandatory. So if I save that now, save the changes, it takes a wee minute. If I go up, oh, you can't see it. You can't see the summary until you save and exit. So let's save and exit. You can see now that that means I did have 8 to do, and I've now got 6 left to do. So that's a good way to check that you're on target for doing everything that you need to do. So just remember that little pencil sign. That pencil sign means you want to amend your response. So basically you would just scroll down, entering in all of these and then checking where you're at. Now, you will get to the section where you've got, you know, the mass murderer type questions, where it's, have you been guilty of this? Now, if you were to answer yes to one of those, it comes up with further questions. So it's quite good because you know if you have answered that correctly. Because sometimes when you're reading it, you're like, oh, hang on, you know, is it have I or have I not? Or, you know, how should I respond to that? So once you have done that, now, once you've finished answering all of the questions, the quality and the technical, then you'd be ready to go up here and do submit response. I'm not going to press that just now because it's not ready. Well, I can't do this work anyway. You guys are the experts in this work. I'm not going to be bidding for it. But when you are ready, you click that submit response, and it does look different when you go back to my ITTs. It confirms that you've done it. I don't think I'd be able to submit anyway because I've still got some mandatory responses that I haven't answered, and that's good. This system does help you make sure that you're answering all the questions that you have to answer, and that you've not missed anything out. So that's just having a look at my response. But before you actually would do any of that, I would always advise that you go into the buyer attachments. So this is where FLS have put all the documents in that they want you to read. And if you go in here, you can see a summary of what's in there. So it only contains one file. If this arrow up here is your back arrow, so, oh, it's taking me right back actually. It's taking me back to all of that. So if I just go into my ITTs, this is what I mean about this system. You do get sort of taken around different places. So here's the master, which is where we were. So if I want to go into buyer attachments and I go into specification documents, then I would suggest that you download all of these. Now this box is hiding there is a mass download function. So what I do is I do the mass download. They end up in your downloads folder. Then I save them in the clients folder. So whoever the client name is, and I'll put FLS, what the closing date is, and then within there I'll put tender docs and put all of these documents in there. And the first thing I would recommend that you do is have a read through all of these. If you like looking at them on screen, that's fine. You can use the highlighting function, etc. Make notes electronically if that's how you like to do things, or if you do like to print things out and highlight them and you know, whatever, then it's entirely up to you how you do this, but it's important that you do read through all of this before you actually start to put your response together. So you can see that it's not very clear because these grey and white areas are really, the grey is really watered down. But actually these are tabs. So at the moment I'm in the ITT details tab, easy for me to say. I've got buyer attachments, I've got my response here. But if we go to the multi-lots, that's when we actually see all of these different lots that you can apply for. And then importantly, and this was mentioned by Claire, is these messages. So if I go into messages, again, underneath that tab, there's different ones: create, received, sent, draft, and forwarded. So if you want to ask a question, so if you've seen something you're not clear about, then you go into create message and you have to choose a heading. So just say it's on weightings, and you could just put in here weightings. Can you clarify the weightings of each question? So I honestly don't think you would be asking this question, because it's very likely that it'll be in one of those documents, but it's just to give you a little indication. You can, if you want, add an attachment. So I've had a situation where there was a question that was a different, a drop-down type response, but they actually asked for an attachment. When I asked the question, they said, "Oh, just attach it." So I actually then had to take a screenshot and send a screenshot to say I can't attach it because it's a drop-down option that's there. So they then were able to change that. So if you do want to indicate something, then you just put an attachment in here, and there's an attachment section down there. If not, then you would, and this little box is getting in my way again, you would then send it. You can save it as draft. So just say you want, there's a bit more I want to look for. You can just save it, or in my case, I'm going to cancel it so it doesn't actually go through. But once you send a message, then it appears in your sent box here. And if FLS send you any messages, then it will appear in your received messages here, and you can forward those messages on, which is really helpful. What I tend to do with questions and answers when I'm working with clients on bids is that we will look at each question and answer and say, does this help us? Does it mean we've got to go back and look at an answer that we've done? Does it mean we've decided to bid, or decided when we had decided not to bid, we are deciding to not bid when we had decided to bid? You know, what is the impact of that, every single question and answer that comes through? But that's where you'll find them. You'll find them in this section here on messages. So just your main bit that you're going to work on is in either ITT details or your multi-lot ITT. And like I say, the blue, the light blue, these are hyperlinks, and it takes you through to your actual tender. So we looked at the qualification response. Let's have a quick look here at the technical response. So you can see here that these are the questions where you're going to have to write an answer. So for example, this one on capacity, providing the FLS with sufficient assurance that you've got the capacity to deliver the annual hectareage that you have stated. So here you've got number of machines, including any subcontractor, and how your business model will encourage deployment of additional specialist peatland operators and investment over the life of the contract. Now, interestingly, this one is an 8 sides of A4. I'm not sure why it's 8 pages, because it doesn't seem like the sort of question that would require an 8-page answer. But it is. So have a look at that. And then similarly with this one, so it's about workforce management, A4 page, and it's Calibri size 11. So this is just because sometimes when you put page limits in, some bidders will try to use really small font just to squeeze more in on the page. Actually, then it becomes difficult to read. So that's why buyers specify font sizes and types of fonts. So you will see here there's a sustainability question, there's your Fair Work First question, and your community benefits question. And the different question types. So all of these are attaching a file. So you will need to answer these and just make notes of your number of pages that you're allowed, so you do stick to those pages. Okay, and then here, this is a good example where you can see there are different question types. So this is just a yes or a no. And confirm whether you're paying the real living wage is a yes or a no. Are you CIS registered? So these are all yes, no questions. You just love yes, no questions because you can knock these off really, really quickly. So once you've done that, like I say, save and exit, and that takes you back to the top. So where previously I had 9 missing, I've now got 6 missing. And it gives you, once you're doing this, you're starting to get a feel for how much work is involved in actually writing this tender, because you're starting to read all of those things. If I go back up here, I can then go into each lot. So if we go into lot 1, we can see that there are there's one attachment, but it's just the response guide. So all the attachments, which I think is a good thing, are held in the master. So you don't have to keep looking in the different lots. All of the attachments are in there. So then you can see the different questions that are getting asked. And actually, there aren't that many quality questions here for 70%. You've got to detail methodology for the different things, and each of them are 8 sides of A4. And then you've got the pricing to do here. So a price per unit to be put down in here. Okay. And then you've got to put in so sometimes what you'll find here, this looks to me like it's a warning sign, a warning triangle. I don't know why it's not a paperclip, because basically that's what it means. It's so look out for these on the questions, because these little triangles mean that there's actually an attachment that they may want you to complete. So you can see here, please complete the attached cost driver breakdown. My mind immediately goes to the attachments, the buyer attachments area, and so you might think, oh, there's nothing there, I can't see this spreadsheet. That's because it's actually in the question itself. So do have a look if any of them have got this triangle, and it looks like that's the only one that's got a triangle in this section anyway. Then just remember to open that and complete that and reattach that as part of your bid. So I think that's us finished with the overview of PCS-T. And is there anything that people want to look at while I'm here?
Now's your chance. Pardon me. Now is your chance if you want Julie to have a look.
This means a yes or a no. If they are saying detail or describe, they've said detail or describe as in it's a description that we need for this particular response. So that usually means there needs to be quite a lot of content there. Sometimes they'll put notes in on the questions to guide you. Read them carefully, because they will definitely help you. There are page limits for these, as you can see. Normally I would use that as an indication of how detailed you need your response to be. And I do notice as well that FLS are asking in some cases for it to be a particular document type. So in this case, it's a PDF. So you can see this is a PDF method here. So here you've got, please detail your working method and explain your approach to these 3 things. And there's a definition of those. So if you look at this, there's 8 sides to that. So if I then, forgot I'm not on that thing there. So if I then go to the next one, oops, breaking that down, breaking the question down into headings. So what's your working method? What's your workflow? What machines will you use? How will we supervise it? And then how will we get a desirable result? Look at the specification and those principles. If you answer all of this, then you will be answering the question, every single element of the question. And that's why it's really good to use the question to create headings. There don't seem to be any of these questions that I can see where there's a response that's required to be typed into a text box. They do seem to mostly be drop-down boxes or add an attachment. But if there is the odd one where they're just got to write it in, you get 2,000 characters, and it's so tempting just to write directly into those. But what I tend to find is because it bounces you out so many times, so quickly, you're better doing everything in a Word document and then copy and pasting the content into PCS-T. We've already covered the lots and the maximum number of lots that you're required. Fair working practices. In terms of the sort of things that FLS will be looking for, they've already given quite a lot of detail in the question, which is really good. But if, for example, the effective voice, you might have staff who are in trade unions, and that's fine, or there may not be a trade union that's relevant. So what else do you do to give the staff an effective voice? It could be that you have whole company, whole team meetings, old-fashioned suggestion box. It could be that you've got a staff committee, that you've got an open door policy, that there's not hierarchical, that anybody can speak to the directors or anything like that. So just think, how do you actually hear from your staff, and how do they make themselves known? How do they come up with suggestions? Have you got evidence of things that they might have suggested that you've then taken on board? Stable contracts, so ideally no 0 hours contracts. What that means is a 0 hours contract is where somebody is employed, but they don't have any guarantee of any work. But if you offer them the work, then they have to do it. So they're kind of at your mercy, really, with a 0 hour contract. It's a bit different from a seasonal type job where you could say to somebody, right, you're on my list. I phoned Julie. Julie, can you do Saturday? No, sorry, I've got something else on. That's totally fine. That isn't a 0 hour contract because I'm not obliged to actually do that Saturday. Reducing inequality. So do you measure diversity? If so, what are your stats? Can you show an improving statistics in terms of diversity of your organisation? What's your gender representation in your organisation and across the senior management teams? What else can you do to encourage a diverse workforce into this industry? Then training development, how much to spend on training, what kind of training you do, have you got a training matrix, how do you allow people to stay ahead of the game in terms of what they can do, and just encourage people to be the best they possibly can be and develop into the sort of thing that they can do. Flexible working, do you have flexi time? Do you have good working practices like part-time working, term time working, flexibility for different commitments, whether that be care commitments, pet commitments, children commitments, all that kind of thing. And there is a question there on the real living wage. So once you form these headings, then you can fill in the details, and it's all about what your organisation does and will do. Community benefits. There was already coverage of this by Claire, so just very briefly, this is additional to what you already do just now. You can't say, oh, we've got 2 apprentices, or we've already got an apprenticeships programme. It's about what you're going to do. So if you were successful in winning this contract, what else would you do that is additional to this. Okay, so there are, the difference with this one is there are examples there and they've each got points. So what you would do is have a look at the options and then choose the ones that add up to the number of points you've got, and then you have to describe them. And I think that's the end of the webinar.